start, I see 46 participants, which is a very good number. I welcome you all. My name is Francesco Molinari. I'm the project manager of the HuMUS Project, which is the host of today's webinar. ANCI Toscana is the Association of Toscan Municipalities. There are about 8,000 municipalities in Italy. 400 of them, more or less so, are located in Tuscany, and each region has an association gathering all the municipalities of that region. Tuscany is one of the nicest landscapes of Italy. Behind me, you can see a projection of what is expected in a century, the Tuscany region to become something more similar to an archipelago than the nice landscape that everybody has in mind. Considering the gravity of environmental issues and especially climate change related issues, the European Commission has launched a number of missions, one of which will be the topic of discussion for today, the soil mission, how to improve the quality of soil, which according to some estimates is particularly compromised in at least 2/3 of the European territories. Before starting with the introduction of the purposes of the meeting and the speakers, the outstanding speakers we have with us today, let me do a couple of announcements concerning the GDPR. First of all, you already know that this session, this webinar is being recorded. The reason is quite obvious. We want to make it public so that other people can enjoy watching after the end of this event. But this also implies that your participation in this webinar as audience will be made visible, and it will be particularly visible if you make questions using the chat box, or we will see if we can also ask some of you to step into the discussion verbally. In all these instances, your identity will be disclosed. So in case you have any issue with disclosing your identity being recorded during a speech or during the waiting time before your question is answered, please leave the meeting now. There will be no way to avoid what I just mentioned. Second announcement, this is a particular form of webinar. Normally, webinars do not display the identity of participants. In this case, we have this possibility, but there is also an issue with handling your personal microphones and cameras, which normally creates some issue while someone is speaking and someone else has left the microphone on and starts talking over phone, for example. So my recommendation is to keep your microphones off unless there is a reason to step into the discussion, as I mentioned. And also, my invitation is to keep the cameras off, also to save on broadband. This is the end of the set of messages for the housekeeping. I see that nobody has left the webinar, so I take it as evidence that you are really enjoying the idea of being part of this event. So without any further ado, and I see now we have reached the nice number of 50 participants, I will share my screen and introduce the purpose of today's workshop and also the agenda of participants, of speakers we have today. So this is my deck. Now you should see the deck in full screen, and I am trying to scroll up and down to see whether you see the changes. So first of all, the partnership. The HuMUS project, funded by the European Union under the Horizon Europe program, is actually a collection of outstanding organizations from 9 countries of Europe. You see, there are representatives from Spain, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, Italy, Slovenia, North Macedonia, and Bulgaria. The names of the organizations are on the right-hand side of the slide, and some of them have sent speakers to us for the organization, for making the organization of this webinar possible. The project started in the beginning of this year and has an expected duration of 3 years. The budget is significant, but what matters the most is that we are holding a so-called cascade funding budget of 600,000 euros, which will be allocated to 20 new initiatives from all over Europe via an open call. The call will be managed by us, ANCI Toscana, as coordinators of the project. As I said before the start, we are connected to the soil mission of the European Union. The specific objectives of the mission we cover are to improve soil literacy in society and to facilitate the deployment of the mission at regional and local levels. This is our expected area of operation. We also have operational objectives in mind, like building capacities, which is connected to improve soil literacy, but also this concept of soil stewardship, which I don't have the time to explain today, and also make innovation possible and upscale innovation in territories, of course, always in connection with the improvement of soil quality, and also create links with the European and national soil communities that are being built all over Europe and with society at large. I mentioned the open call. Let me specify better what I was meaning, because I think it is a topic connected with the discussion of today. We are planning to launch the call officially on the 6th of November. This date is firm because on the 6th of November, there will be an event of the Spanish presidency of the European Union, during which myself and Anna Laura Vannuccini, who is the coordinator of HuMUS on behalf of ANCI Toscana, will be invited to speak at that event just for the purpose of presenting the details of the open call. The call is still under preparation. It will be discussed next week with all the partners, so I cannot disclose much of its details. Let's say that indicatively there will be some time, maybe more than just 4 months, like it is now mentioning a possible deadline at the end of February next year, but more or less we will be, let's say, at the end of the winter time, beginning of the springtime, for the presentation of proposals. And then, of course, evaluation will follow, and award of a so-called cascade funding grant of 30,000 euros as a lump sum amount, which means no obligation to present cost statements or other forms of financial reports, to 20 projects, we name them pilot projects, of participatory governance of soil issues at local and regional level, which is the focus of our project. Why governance projects? Because governance is pointed at as a way to solve or start solving problems of soil quality in local and regional communities. A requirement of the call will be to sign a binding territorial agreement for the meaning of this concept, I don't have time to explain, but it is intuitive from the title, with a list of forthcoming actions to improve the quality of soil. But it's also relevant that this governance be participatory, which is connected with today's workshop topic, because we believe, and we would like to demonstrate, that the problems of soil may gain some benefit, and we will see throughout the pilot projects which kind of benefits, by the engagement of a number of relevant stakeholders from the local and the regional level. So participation has an added value for soil policies and strategies. Which brings me to my last slide and the topic of today's webinar. We have basically two distinct sessions for this webinar, which will be animated by a number of outstanding speakers, whom I will introduce as soon as they take the floor, also with a short bio. Here you can see their names and organizations of affiliation. The first block of speakers directly comes from the consortium, the HuMUS consortium. We have 4 partners of the consortium sending their representative to the floor. In the second part of the workshop, we also have the pleasure of having with us Dr. Roy Nilsson from the James Hutton Institute in Scotland, and Professor Sven Mahan from the University of Hohenheim in Germany, also a partner of our consortium. This is it from my side. So I thank you for your attention. Stop sharing my screen. My invitation for the time being is to start using the chat box, all of you, to make questions. I will read the chat box together with my colleague Boogie from Agroecology Europe, whom I take the opportunity to thank for making today's webinar possible. So Boogie and myself will check if there are questions, especially questions for the person who is speaking, and then coordinate a reply to the questions. I already have comments here. Giampiero from Erin shared the link to the official event of the Spanish presidency I was mentioning earlier. So take a look while people are speaking. Take also a look to into the chat box for what can be relevant to know. Meanwhile, we have reached the number of 61, which is really encouraging in terms of audience. Thank you for staying here. I hope we will keep you tight, linked until the end. So now let me pass the floor to Dr. Rafael Tiziani from the Free University of Bolzano in South Tyrol in Italy. Rafael has a master's degree in agricultural biotechnology from the University of Verona in Italy, and a PhD in food engineering and biotechnology from the University of Bolzano Bozen. In the HuMUS consortium, he is supporting the leader of the scientific work package, the one putting together existing evidence on various aspects, including participatory governance of soil. The work package is led by Professor Tania Mimmo, whom I also see in this webinar. So, Rafael, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will try to share my screen. Okay. Just a second. Okay. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can. Try to go back and forth.
Very good.
To see whether it changes.
Yes. Okay, so thank you for the introduction, and I will speak a bit more in detail about the first work package of the HuMUS project. The first work package, which is called Soil Intelligence. Soil intelligence typically refers to the understanding and management of soil health and quality in agricultural and environmental science. Soil intelligence involves the collection of data information about physical, chemical, and biological soil properties to make this is done to make informed decisions for sustainable land use and crop management. So it lies basically the basis for the rest of the project, but especially for WUPI2, on which we will talk later second. So what are we going to do in Work Package 1? Work Package 1 gathers all the desk analysis and preparatory initiatives to support the citizen and stakeholder dialogues on soil health issues. So it is like a preparatory work package, which is crucial for the ongoing of the rest of the project. We will evaluate soil health assessment methods, which are used by land users, and their adaptation in the specific regions. And we assess state of the art in participatory processes and soil dialogue and social dialogues on soil use and land management. Then the work package will create an overview of regional specific policies to make a catalog of best practices for the improvement of soil health, as well as mapping all the available European funds for soil health promotion and land use management. And as I said, this all is done basically to develop a training program for the so-called soil stewards. A soil steward is a figure, a person, which is going to facilitate the dialogue between soil health between the different stakeholders. The soil steward is here to spread the knowledge gathered through the whole WUPI1. So the WUPI1 directly, the work package 1 of the HuMUS project directly flows into the WUPI2, which is about regional and local thematic innovation ecosystems, and constructs those dialogues on soil health on regional level in the 8 countries of our consortium. So what are the specific objectives of our work package and of HuMUS? First of all, we will create fact sheets containing user-friendly, quick and easy methods to carry on-site soil health assessment, to facilitate also the discussion and the dialogues on soil health through these easy methods, which are easy operable by other people, not just soil experts. Then we will we created already a framework tool for municipalities and citizens to overcome knowledge gaps and increase the general understanding of basic processes, drivers, and mechanisms affecting soil health. And Mariana is talking a bit more about that in a bit more detail later. Moreover, we will make a report about all the participatory methods and dialogues which we can use for soil use and land management discussions, and also this will be described a bit more in detail by Alberto in a few minutes. Finally, we will create an overview of all the regional specific policies on soil health and create a catalog of practices to improve soil health. Here we have performed questionnaires to gain this information from different stakeholder groups, and yes. And finally, we will also assess the EU state of the art in sustainable smart specialization strategies, so as you know, and map all the available EU funds for soil health promotion and land use management. And I want to give emphasis that all this information will be used to create this training program for the soil stewards. And again, the soil stewards for WP2 and the soil stewards will act then as facilitators for creating the dialogue between the different stakeholders, so between municipalities and farmers and so on. And yes, I think more or less that's it from my side. And if you have any questions.
Yes, thanks, Rafael, for your speech. I see there is a question from Rossano Filippini. Who and how the stewards will be trained or formed? In my experience, quality of teachers is by far more important than quantity.
Yes, for sure. We will try to so we are all this information I showed to you here now is gathered by experts. So we will try to have, of course, a high quality information database for the training, and also we will teach the soil stewards basically by ourselves. So we'll try to ensure the quality of teaching for the soil stewards. Yes.
And then there is another question from Antonia Cobaccio. When will the call for proposals be resolved with the materials, courses, etc., to be developed, be available for the projects that are approved? Okay, the call will be awarded before mid-year next year, so before June, let's say April or May. So the question for you, Rafael, will we be ready with the materials and so on in time for April or May or June next year, when we expect the projects we will fund will also be ready to start?
Yes, the materials will should be ready at the end of this year, so the beginning of next year. All the WP1 materials. Then the training program will be developed from that year in the upcoming weeks, beginning of next year.
Okay.
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, so that sounds great. I don't see any other question. Feel free to continue making questions in the chat box. Now, also for reasons of time, let me pass the floor to Dr. Carmen Navarro Mesquita from AGAPA. Carmen is a geographer. She has a Master of Science at the University of Aberdeen in the UK. She currently works for AGAPA, which is the Andalusian Agency of Agriculture and Fisheries, one of the partners of HuMUS. She has also been involved in remote sensing and GIS projects. Carmen, the floor is yours.
Morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Can you share
Okay.
the screen, or you don't have any slide?
Bogi, can you show the slides, please? Okay.
Okay, so an instant.
Yes, I will show the slides, and then just one organizational note that we please continue putting questions in the chat, and we will take the questions at the end of all of the presentations. So we will have a discussion, but first we'll go through the presentation.
Okay, that's also for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Morning, and sorry I've been a bit late because we had problems here because there's we have got rain and we have problems with internet. So the main objective of Work Package 2 is establishment of constructive dialogues in selected regions among the quadruple helix, to understand and to research commonly problems about soils in Europe, and find solutions in a co-creation process. We are package 2, so we work in close contact with package 1, as they are feeding us with methodologies and what all the stuff they're getting, and in parallel we will feed orientations in the call. Though at the moment, I have to say we haven't started yet. The launch of our package will take place in the meeting in the consortium meeting in Granada next year in January. So I will give a brief overview what we intend, how we focus the group, the package, and what we expect. Hopefully next year we'll have some things to share with you. So the objective is, as I've already mentioned, create territorial spaces or dialogues with local actors. In the second year, as expected result, a work plan template will be made. That work plan includes facilitation methods and interactive exercise glossaries. It's just to facilitate dialogues, to stimulate and to cheer up people to play. The third year, the expected results, which are very important, is a replicability strategy will be defined for us, designed between us, and that's the pain point, because the things are working, and the challenge is we can translate them to other territories, maybe in the same region or another one. Okay, next slide, please. So those are the territories. Next slide. Just wanted to show you a photograph. We have got 13 territories in 8 countries. Those are territories where experiences are taking place, are going on, and with a acceptable success, so they could be replicated in other places. And maybe these cases could be part of the network of living labs and lighthouses, which is envisaged in the soil mission, one of the objectives. Next slide, please. So we selected the cases, as I've already mentioned. We're applying some criteria which you can see in the header. This is an example of Stara Planina in Bulgaria, urban land use, because our scope is the main parts of our cases are agriculture, but also urban is very interesting, and we wanted to also to focus on that, and maybe in the future we would like to have other land uses, such as deserts or wastelands or whatever, just to have a high scope, broad scope to cover all possible land uses. So this is in Bulgaria, land use urban. Also, we wanted to link our project, our pilot projects with the objectives of the soil mission. Otherwise, it won't play any role. We have identified the stakeholders, and that's a good practice. Shared compositing in urban environment in Stara Planina, and we could replicate potentially in regional mountains of central Stara Planina, also in municipalities within the region. But who knows? Maybe we could transfer it to other places, and it would work. So that's an example. Next slide, please. So that's our proposal, how we want to carry out the dialogues. So just to begin, a map of stakeholders, just to know who plays the role, who is you know, the leader in the actors, and just to map, just a picture. Step 2 is identify possible solutions which are easy, not complicated, and we will think outside the box. And the final step is, as I've already said, commented, a replicability strategy, and that's a big challenge, just to see if it works, and if it works, it's great, because any other one can try to use it in a country or region. The territorial management agreements is quite important, is a key to crystallize the results of the dialogues and the actions we need to put in place. So it's like a plan. Okay, next slide. Some of the things, these aspects will be also explained by Alberto, so we are 50-50. Okay, step 1 is just, okay, common things, what's happening, what we think is happening in the territory, in the land, with a SWOT analysis, just the first picture, map of factors we're displaying from the quadruple helix. That means everyone who has to say something, just to farmers or associations, business, also administration, because all things have to be transposed into public policies and workshops. That's the key, just to establish the dialogues. Of course, in all this process will be supported by the tools and also by the stewards. So a steward of WP1, so that we can know what to do, and we will have stuff to support. So and that's more in depth described, the second workshop, and the territorial work plans. It be desirable, and they're quite important, because it's like a plan, what we have to do, a map route, and will establish also the basis for replication solutions. So it's quite important to achieve just commitment of the regions. Okay, and also supported by soil train stewards, and that's the last one. Step 3, please. So that's one of the main points. If it's worked in other region, it should work in a similar region, maybe here, maybe in the same region, maybe in another country. That's a point. The more replicability we can achieve, the more we can spread, the more we can share, and then everyone will try to establish solution for the soil. So that's all, folks, and thank you very much. That's from Granada. I live in Seville, but that's our consortium meeting will take place there, and we have some couple of pilot areas which we will visit. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you very much for your speech. Now it should start becoming clearer that on top of the 20 pilot projects we aim at funding through the open call, we will have also 13 more coming from the inside of the consortium. I see a question from Rossano Filippini. Benchmarks, how would this be practically monitored? There is a lot, and also that part, monitoring and evaluation, will be shared in terms of methodology between the 20 external pilot projects and the 13 that belong to the consortium. But now let me pass the floor, because it starts being very relevant, to Alberto Mataran Ruiz, Professor of Urban and Regional Planning at the University of Granada and also visiting scholar at the Department of Geography of the University of Cambridge in the UK. Alberto is the leader of the definition of methodologies and tools for participatory governance of soil issues, which may be useful to both the external pilots and the pilots in the project, in the HuMUS project. So I really look forward to hearing his presentation. Alberto, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Welcome. Good morning, everybody. I will start sharing my screen. All right. I hope it will work. All right. All right. So I have to go out from Zoom and come back again. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. Meanwhile, let's see if there are other questions from the audience. It doesn't seem to be the case. So let me break the silence by saying that, as Carmen mentioned, activities inside the consortium will be kickstarted in January next year on the occasion of the scheduled consortium meeting in Granada. So our idea is to get ready more or less in line with the timing of the open call. According to our schedule, preliminary schedule, we plan on awarding the 20 projects towards the month of April or May at the latest, signing the contracts before mid-June. Also for administrative reasons, I don't have time to explain, but the idea, the milestone is to have the contracts signed and the 20 projects ready to start until mid of next year, in parallel with the development of our own 13 projects. So the idea will be to make it so that the things run in parallel. And so also time-wise, I see the question from Antonia. The project, as I mentioned, the HuMUS project lasts until the end of 2025. We will be next year when the pilot project start, we will be in June, July 24. So you can expect, let's say, a duration of 12 to 18 months, but more 12 than 18, because as Carmen mentioned, like in our projects, we would like you to exercise yourselves in the art of assessing the replication potential of these activities. So that's why the field actions should probably last no longer than 12 months. The stewards, Leonardo Galli, will not be selected. It will be an open opportunity for everyone, of course, on a first come, first served basis. Now Alberto is back, so Alberto, please take the floor and let us know what your plans are. Thank you.
All right, now I can do that. Sorry about these computer problems these days. Having always problem with my new computer. Right, so, all right, I will start. I hope you're all seeing my screen. Yeah?
Yeah, go.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I apologize again. So I first want to thank ANCI Toscana and also Agroecology Europe as the two partners who are organizing this webinar and also leading, in the case of ANCI, our project. As you were already told, I will make a presentation on best practices on participation based on our approach, which is the HuMUS methodology. It is based on the approach of organic districts, which is an approach that has been widely applied mainly in Italy, but also in other European countries such as Spain or Portugal. Right. So first, there's a question on municipalities engaging on soil health, is that those institutions are very important for soil health. As they are managing some issues related to soil, they are producing regulations, they are producing planning processes, innovation and community building, but sometimes their competencies are not really clear according to these questions. So, for example, agriculture, it's not normally a local or municipal competence duty. So we have some problems there. In this case, we have many best practices related to this possible engagement of municipalities around soil health, and that started mainly from the 90s of the last century, according to these local agendas 21, that some of them are still going on. And then we got some developments of the urban agenda and the latest developments on the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, for example. But those best practices have always the problem of space, the problems of territory, as their policies affecting the real spatial planning or management of the soil are always having conflicts with the big important stakeholders in their municipalities. In this case, we found some interesting references on the agrarian parks or agricultural parks within the Europark Federation. For example, in the case of Barcelona or Milan, or even in the metropolitan area of Florence, and in other parts of France, for example, with other names, where they are considering very well this issue and making producing very good samples on this idea of soil health. Why participation? Participation, as Francesco said, is a very important question when we are talking about soil health, because the stakeholders are directly affecting to this soil health. Their activities are directly related to the soil health. So we need to engage all those citizens and stakeholders to produce the changes to improve the quality of the soil health, to improve the reality of our soil health, of our soils that are now in a critical situation. In our case, we are presenting a framework of a participatory methodology that is quite flexible, but has some ideas that we want to have, we want to make them follow by the partners, and also by those people and organizations applying to the open call, and mainly municipalities, because we believe that we need to make innovations in terms of participation, and mainly to develop new kinds of participation that could be useful to engage stakeholders and to activate these policies according to this territorial agreement, management agreement that we are going to develop in our HuMUS project. There are many best practices according to that in the case of urban regeneration. Coming here with the example of the Miraflores Park in Sevilla in Spain. And as you can see in these images, the engagement of the population also as a grassroots initiative that after that was helped by the municipal and regional administration, has produced a huge change on the soil health within the peripheric areas of this big city of the south of Spain. For us, participation is to take part in the decision making and in the final product of the process. So participation is not only information or opinion or consensus building, is co-decision. So this is a first main idea that we want you to follow when you are applying to the open call, and we want that our partners will follow within the process of the pilot cases that we are developing in the HuMUS project. We rather believe that this kind of an administration that is open to co-decision will produce innovative and very successful experiences and projects. In this case, we want you also, if it's possible, to include your initiatives if you're already working with participation in the soil health issues, which is a very broad range of questions. So we want you to include your initiative in our best practice catalog. So this will help also then to produce your own project for the open call, because some of the data are the same, and also it will increase the visibility of your experience and the possibilities of networking with other experiences in Europe and also worldwide. Our approach, our participatory approach, is based on participatory research and action, which is the main question related to the possible co-decision, so the possible methodologies that increase the collective decisions made within the administrations, municipalities mainly, and also the stakeholders and the citizens that are living in a certain area, in a certain territory. Within this case, we are, as I said before, thinking in a broad process of participation that will need more than councils, more than traditional ways of participation, and thinking in construction of mechanisms and spaces that will last for long within the municipalities. So within this process, probably we are considering that participation will produce better results. We have some best practices around that. One of them is interesting in the case of Portugal, in the case of forest management in Portugal, because this is like a global policy arriving to the local level with this kind of participatory and engagement methods. So these ideas are not only for urban or peri-urban examples, but also for rural and mountain land uses, territories where the population is less, and where the dispersion of these municipalities and the size of the municipalities can produce problems on participatory methodologies. But we rather think that with this kind of methodology that we are proposing, these conflicts or problems will be solved in the local context, also in the peripheric areas. Our methodology is based on step 0. It's launching the process. We are thinking on the process being launched by municipalities, but also could be launched by other organizations within the local context. And in this case, we have like 2 initial parts. One has been described here before. It's the idea of solid stewards, including their identification and the training, which is very important. And second is the approval of the soil manifesto, which is like the main or the initial position on the idea of soil health, according to this European policy that is very advanced in terms of solving the soil problems. So, for example, it's probably the first time that the European Union has an official document talking clearly about reducing, limiting, and also eliminating further soil sealing, which is very important in terms of climate change and soil health. So to end, I'm showing an idea and a scheme of our proposed methodology. It has already been described by some of the presentations before. And I think that here you can see the framework. We recommend this framework for the open call. You can also use other frameworks, but in this case, our idea is that we have a flexible framework where stakeholders' engagement and participation in co-decision is very important. So we are really focusing on this idea of stakeholders being a real important part of the process, including, for example, being some of them soil stewards. So this idea of mixing administration with citizens and other stakeholders will be the key idea of our methodology. I cannot go deep on that because I don't have time. I will just show you the last 2 examples, the last 2 best practices that are very important for us, as they are like giving an idea of the possible success of our framework. So the first one is the organic district of the municipality of Fiesole in Tuscany, Italy, and the second one is the same, or the other another organic district among many of them that they are in Tuscany, but in this case, the organic district of Calenzano, also in the metropolitan area of Florence. So in both cases, we can show the success of this kind of participatory methodologies, engaging the community and the stakeholders from the very beginning. In the case of Fiesole, it was even a citizen initiative. So it was a grassroots initiative that was then helped facilitated by the municipality and also other organizations and universities. So this was less systemized because they were using public meetings, constituent assembly, etc. But it was very, very successful. It has 50% of organic agriculture within this municipality. So it could be considered as a very interesting example, one of the first examples of the organic districts in Italy, and probably in the world. And the second one, and I will end with this, is the example of Calenzano, which was a municipal initiative, and of course, more systemized, more organized, but it doesn't really mean that it has to be better or worse. It's another way of applying this kind of participatory methodologies. And within this case, they had the help of the research centers and the University of Florence from the very beginning. And they use interesting methodologies in terms of engaging stakeholders within their territory. And they finally end with an interesting definition of the redesigning the agricultural and food systems, which are key in the metropolitan areas to protect and improve soil health. Okay, thank you very much. I'm open to any questions just now or maybe at the end. Thanks a lot.
Okay, my proposal is to skip the questions for now and keep them for later, because I want at least to finalize the first group of presentations. Now we are penalizing a bit our last presenter, which is unfair. So I think it is the time to pass the floor to my colleague from the consortium, Dr. Marianne Hoogmoed, from the Louis Bolk Institute. Marianne is a soil researcher working on sustainable agriculture at the Louis Bolk Institute in the Netherlands, which is an independent research organization specialized in participatory research with farmers. So Marianne, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, my name is Marianne Hoogmoed. I will be presenting on a tool that we've made or developed that is part of the toolbox for these soil stewards that are trained within the project. Yeah, so the previous speakers have sort of given the wider picture of the project, and I'm going to really zoom into one of the tools that the soil stewards can be using to facilitate a regional dialogue on soil health. And yeah, a little bit of context on why we produced this visual tool. As a soil researcher myself, but I think a lot of people in the audience today, they are they're working on soils. They very passionate people about soils. We love soil. We know the soil is incredibly important. So when you're working in soil so much, sometimes it's hard to get your head out of the soil, so to say. And so the aim of this visual tool is to facilitate conversations about soil health, but without losing sight of other important topics in a region. Of course, the soil is not a thing in itself. It interacts with its environment. So any, for example, different management or any new policies that we come up with to protect or to improve soil health will also have an effect on these other topics in a region. So this tool, we've for now called it the Region Soil Dialogue Tool. We're struggling a bit with the name, so any suggestions are more than welcome. As I said, it is part of the syllabus for the soil stewards. And it consists of a website. That's an interactive website that can be used during regional stakeholder meetings or workshops. And the idea is that you can come to sort of a shared view of the region, so that everyone in the workshop, all the stakeholders, sort of have the same idea of what we're talking about and what the current status of the all these items in the region are. And it's also a way to visualize what might happen if you, for example, have a soil health measure. If you implement that, what might happen to the other topics that are important in this region. So I'm going to go to the website in a moment, but I'm going to give an example case study to illustrate how you can use this tool a bit. So actually my colleagues a few years ago, this is a real life example. They were involved in a regional process in this region called Polder de Purmer in the Netherlands. So this is a region that has mostly agriculture, land use, mostly pastures for dairy farming and a few broadacre agriculture. And then an entrepreneur came along who wanted to start doing a wood production for bio-based building. So he wanted to plant quite a large area in this region with trees for timber production. Now the council wasn't quite sure how to deal with this question, so they decided to organize a regional stakeholder meeting. And many people were invited, like farmers, the regional council, the municipality, the water board, a nature organization, the entrepreneur himself, and a soil steward. So that was actually my colleague. So that was a researcher, and then also the facilitator of the meeting. So the meeting was prepared first by the soil stewards. They gathered a lot of information about the region. They used a lot of visual images, because that just that invites a lot of conversation and makes people picture the region more visually. So for example, this is a map of water pollution, the state of water pollution in different areas. There's another picture of important policy in the Netherlands, the climate agreement, the Dutch climate agreement. So the soil steward gave sort of an introductory presentation to the group. And then they used the visual tool to further guide the presentation, the workshop. So I'm going to go to this website now that we made. So in the example, we didn't have this website yet, but we used sort of a prototype. So in this website, you can see there are sort of thermometers. This is not supposed to be here yet, these arrows, but well, it doesn't matter too much. This is behind. Get rid of this. Sorry. So these thermometers, above each thermometer is the topic of the that is important in a region. So for example, in the Netherlands, soil quality is a very important topic, but of course also climate, water quality, quantity, biodiversity. There are several more predefined topics indicated, and then there's also space to put another topic. You can type it here yourself that is important in your region that we may have forgotten. In the bottom here of the website, it also has some explanation on how to use the tool. But effectively, you're in a group with all these stakeholders, and so you first have a conversation about, okay, what is the current status of, for example, the soil quality, or the climate issues, or water quality. Here, these information buttons, they give a bit of information, like what do we mean by water quality, and then you use the knowledge of all the stakeholders that are there to sort of come to an agreed, shared view of the status, and you can indicate it with these bars. So let's say for the example of the wood production, they've come to the conclusion or the shared view that this is sort of the state of these topics. Here, there's also a text balloon. You can click on it. That's really for the soil steward to keep the conversation going. If there's just some inspiration for questions to ask the group to get to some to keep the conversation going. And then the next step is to consider, okay, if, for example, we do this wood production in this area, what might happen, firstly, to the soil quality? Again, as the result of the conversation, we might all agree on, okay, the soil quality will go up. So then we put the arrow up. Similar for climate, maybe water quality, there's no real effect that the group can think of. But quantity might be a bad effect because trees take up more water. So that it might be a negative effect on water quantity. And maybe similarly for biodiversity and nature, that might also have a negative effect. So this is then the result of the conversation that you've had in the group with your stakeholders. And in this way, yeah, it's just nicely visualized. Everyone can have a look at it. You can save these pictures and put it in a report or use them again in a next presentation. Yeah, and in this way, it just gives the soil steward a bit more, something to base the conversation around, and you get a shared view. So yeah, that's actually what I wanted to share today, what we've been developing. The website is live. I can put the URL in the chat box, and soon it will also be linked on the HuMUS website. And we also have sort of a user manual, sort of a guide manual for the soil stewards that give a bit more information on how to prepare, for example, the introduction meeting, presentation, what kind of other visual maps and things you can collect to guide the workshop. Yeah, so that's what
Thank you very much, Marian.
Yeah. Welcome.
It was very nice presentation. If you can type the URL, there was a request on the chat box. I made the warning that it's still ongoing work because we have a delivery date to the Commission until the end of this year. But in any case, it's already something we can see and maybe comment on. Now, without further ado, I would like to go to the first of our two invited speakers, Dr. Roy Nilsson from the James Hutton Institute. Roy is a soil ecologist. His expertise lies in understanding the functional interactions which are mediated by soil faunal groups in the context of food security and the climate and nature crisis. He leads the Healthy Soils for a Green Recovery program funded by the Scottish Government through their 22-27 strategic research program. The primary aim of that program is to strengthen the evidence base to support and inform decision-making, practice and uptake for sustainable management and minimization of degradation and loss of soil, considering the intrinsic value of the soil and the benefits in terms of ecosystem services that this approach can provide. Neil, sorry for having you wait, but I think you will also take some time of your speech to comment on what you have been listening to understand, to let us understand whether we are on the right track or not, according to your important opinion. Thank you, and the floor is yours. Now, Roy is ready to start. Roy, can you hear me? Something's happening.
I think he was shortly out of the meeting, but I think
I think he had the same problem as Alberto before. Roy, can you hear us?
He's here now.
I apologize profusely. I should warn, if I go again, we have a severe storm outside and we just had a power outage. So we are under a red alert because we're expecting over 200 millimeters of rain, and the winds are about 100, 110 kilometers an hour just now. So if I disappear, I apologize, but it's our power is going out. So would you like me to start the presentation?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Sorry about this. Okay, everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Apologies again for me disappearing briefly. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you some of the participatory science that we at the James Hutton Institute have done over the last 20, 30 years to communicate the benefits of soil health and soil stewardship to citizens at all levels. So the title of the talk, Muck In, Get Your Hands Dirty. Let me just see, it's moving, there we go. Started about 30 years ago when in the UK, there was a huge debate about GMO, genetically modified crops, and we were horrified with the lack of information and knowledge on both sides of the argument. So we decided at that stage to inform citizens of the importance of soil and crops. And we did that initially through an initiative called the Living Field. And the James Hutton Institute, or as was our previous name, the Scottish Crop Research Institute, we have research farms, and we converted one of our farms into what we called a living field. You might call it now a living laboratory, where we held events and communicated the importance of soil and soil health and biodiversity to the community. And we specifically, in this case, targeted children. Our view was, this is the next generation. And when the next debate equivalent to GMO happened, they would be informed. They would have the knowledge, unlike the generation of the 1990s. And interestingly, some of the children that came through the Living Field are now some of our activists and some of our local enthusiasts about soil and biodiversity. And we did many things. For example, on the left, we created in the field a map of Scotland from different soil types and rocks, and we planted crops and that grow in different areas of Scotland. And this was to scale. This was a very large piece of art, shall we say, a real living art. And we involved children in all aspects of biodiversity, soils, basically muck in, get your hands dirty. And we worked with Scottish Government and very specifically the Department of Education. And we created a CD called The Living Field. And this was all about soils, soil health, biodiversity, and how you grow crops to have food. And this was sent to every single school in Scotland and became part of the curriculum. And one of the things we did is we asked the kids to be the narrators. So here you see some of the pictures of the children who acted as the voices for that initiative at the local radio station, who very kindly helped us record the CD. And that became part of the core curriculum across all Scottish schools for children between 5 and 14 years of age. And then moving to slightly older children, shall we say, we also had an artist in residence. And Jean, who was our artist, she had many exhibitions. And here we have one very specifically on plant roots and also soils. And that reached the different audiences and a whole range of different citizens. And moving from the Living Field, we were a participant in the Grow Observatory led by the University of Dundee. And that was one of the citizen observatories funded by the European Union under Horizon 2020. And just to give you a flavour of the outreach of the Grow Observatory, we created 24 grow communities. We had sensors in clusters in 13 different countries across Europe. Over 20,000 people actively participated in our initiatives. We had over 17,000 Grow learners. Now, to explain Grow, this was now aimed at millennials and Gen Z, who were people who really didn't know where their food came from, but they went to the shop and they bought food, but they didn't know where they came from, and had never grown food in soil. So this was very targeted at this community, and we tried to explain and engage people of that age group where food came from, how important it was for soils in order to grow and support that food production, and basically get their hands dirty. And we ran online courses about soil, and we had 7.8 million of a reach, 165 countries, and in total we had 6,500 sensors across the Grow platform, and I'll briefly mention this. So here's a map of where we reached on the MOOC on the left-hand side. We ran, I think, 14 different courses on soils and food production. We created a mobile phone app about what was the correct crop or food to grow in your region, all about climate change. We had information about climate change, about soils, about biodiversity, and we could create communities of where citizens could communicate with one another through this platform. But it wasn't just citizens for citizens, it was also citizens to help scientists. So we had these sensors around Europe, and we used these sensors, the data was collected by citizens, to ground truth and spatially calibrate Sentinel-1. It was the first time such a citizen engagement had ever been used to calibrate satellite measurements. And we could also generate real-time soil moisture maps. And this is an example of one of the locations in Hungary. And finally, one of the other initiatives is we had the Great Grow experiment, which was about living soils. And it was testing what is now called regenerative agricultural practices and comparing that against commercial agricultural practices to demonstrate that with fewer inputs into the soil, you could generate the same yield, the same crops, and the same quality. So moving from the Grow Observatory, this might seem an odd thing to include here, but this was hugely important in terms of soil health, because in the UK we have an invasive species you see on the right-hand side. It is a flatworm, a planarian, that predates on earthworms and will eradicate earthworms from an area where it invades. And everyone, I'm sure, is aware that earthworms are ecosystem engineers and help to maintain the health of soils. So through numerous media interviews, we were on television, we were on the news, we were on the radio, the newspapers, and this particular example is part of the Open Air Laboratory, a major citizen science initiative in the UK. We asked citizens to go out and look for this invasive species. In total, I think we're at about 5,000 records. This particular initiative created just over 600 records. And we were able to map where this invasive alien species was. And we could put management practices in place, and especially in cities, in gardens where earthworms are hugely important for the maintenance of soil and green space. Here's a new initiative. This is one of my colleagues at the James Hutton Institute. There is a popular hobby in Scotland called Munro bagging. So a Munro is a hill that is greater than 914 meters above sea level. And there are something like 2,000 odd Munros in Scotland. But it's crucially part of the alpine ecosystem in Scotland. And we know nothing or very little about the alpine soils. So Andrea, my colleague, has initiated a small-scale initiative, citizen science initiative, and she has asked mountaineers and hikers and ramblers to, when we're climbing the Munros, please take a soil sample. And they're busy just now sequencing the soil and focusing on fungal components, fungal communities of the alpine soils in Scotland. And finally, Tanya is on the call. Tanya is the coordinator of ECHO, a newly funded EU soil mission call, where the focus is to improve soil literacy across Europe and Scotland. And ECHO will develop tailor-made citizen science initiatives across EU member states and Scotland. We will focus on different land uses, soil types, different regions, and consider stakeholder needs. We anticipate at least 28 citizen science initiatives, and we anticipate 16,500 sites, of which, and I've got a little infographic there, we intend to sequence the microbial and fungal communities of those sites. And these initiatives will be inclusive to citizens at all levels. And the project's just started a few months ago, and I invite you to go to the project website there. And I think that's me, and thankfully the electricity has not went off. So I thank you for the opportunity just to share with you some of the many and diverse participatory citizen science methods we've used in Scotland. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roy. That was really amazing. I think we don't have questions in the chat box, but a lot of congrats that I invite you to read. That was really astonishing with the figures and also the outputs and outcomes of your work. So congratulations also from my side. Now let's give this technical announcement. It's 11:24. We still have another distinguished speaker. So my expectation is to finalize this webinar with 10 minutes delay towards 11:40, 11:45 max. This will sacrifice a bit the time for questions, but please continue using the chat box and maybe leave your email address if you want to receive a personal answer in case we cannot make it in time. So my proposal now is to pass the floor to our last but not least speaker, Sven Maran, senior researcher at the University of Hohenheim in Germany, Department of Soil Biology. Sven studied biology and ecology at the Technical University of Darmstadt in Germany. He wrote a dissertation on the role of earthworms in soil organic matter turnover. For the last 19 years, he has worked at the Institute of Soil Science and Land Evaluation at the Department of Soil Biology of the University of Hohenheim, researching environmental impacts such as climate change, biochar, land use intensity, and agroforestry on soil organisms. Sven, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Francesco, for this nice introduction. And I will share my screen and hope it will work. Can you see my presentation in the full screen modus?
Yes.
Good. So, yes, so I'm at the Department of Soil Biology, but today I will focus more on the organic carbon and not so much on the organisms that live in the soil. So our department is located in the Faculty of Agriculture. So my focus is clearly focused on agricultural soils, not so much on urban or municipal soils in case of park areas, etc. I would like to start with the role of soil humus. So it's quite nicely connected to the name of your project. Oh, I cannot go on. One moment. Sorry. I cannot go to the next slide.
Maybe you could try operating in the editing mode.
Yes. Now it works. No.
No.
Strange.
Try to
I will
try
stop.
to change from presenter mode to editing mode and see if you can share your slides through the editing mode.
Can you see it again? My screen?
Yes.
But it doesn't work. Strange. Sorry for this.
No problem.
This is new to me.
Do we have a copy of this presentation?
So now I have the second slide, but I still cannot go on.
You want me to share your I have your presentation.
Yeah, this would be nice to share the presentation.
Yeah, go ahead.
I will stop it.
Okay.
Yeah, so why it's so topical, the issue of soil. So from my perspective, it's so one of the main aspects of soil is really the storage of soil, of carbon, or of soil carbon. And so based on this FERPA-MIL initiative, which was launched 2014, 2015, it's based on the increase of soil organic carbon due to appropriate management of soils. Yes, you can go on. So sorry, I have some. And I think it's a very good idea to increase the soil organic carbon, but it's very ambitious to do it in a way this initiative is postulating this. Because you need a lot of nitrogen, etc., and climate change will maybe counteract it, and competition of biomass, etc. So I will go first to a definition of terms. The next slide. So what is soil organic carbon? So there are different measures and different definitions made. So soil organic carbon, so the SOC, it's typically given in a mass percent or in gram carbon per kilogram of soil. So it's typically measured by elemental analysis where the total carbon is measured and maybe the inorganic carbon is measured separately. And of course, you have to take care if you see this data that you have really the soil organic carbon and not the CO2 equivalent. So you have to maybe divide it or multiply it with a factor of 3.67 to get the other unit. And this soil organic carbon stocks are typically given as a organic carbon per area base. Next, please. And now, but the soil organic carbon is not the same as the soil humus. So in humus, there are other elements included, and you have a higher mass for humus. So take care if you compare graphs of different units. So if you have humus or if you have soil organic carbon. So next, please. So as I said, soil organic carbon stocks are given per area typically, and the calculation of this carbon includes the thickness of the soil and the bulk density. So how dense is the soil in the different horizon or soil layers. And it's also very important when you're comparing carbon stocks to know to which soil depth this investigation was made. So typically it's only the up 30 centimeters, but you have to keep in mind that a lot of carbon can be also stored in the subsoil, so below these 30 centimeters. Next, please. And then a lot of people are talking about sequestration in soils, and also in the context of farmers who wants to do increasing their humus, they're talking about sequestration. And I would say it's not right, because sequestration means really that this carbon is stored in the soil for very long time, so maybe centuries or millennia. And if it's just humus, this humus can be degraded within quite a short time, which we'll see in the next slides, please. So what is the origin of this soil carbon? So of course, plants need to grow on the soil. So the soil without plants on it or without other photosynthetic active organisms, it's impossible to increase the soil organic carbon. So it can be soil algae, lichens, or cyanobacteria, which are also contributing to the soil organic carbon, but their role is largely unknown. The other origin of soil organic carbon is the return of crop residues, which can be from the same area or from an outside area, so an external input into the soil. So it can be straw, manure, slurry, biogas slurry, etc. And it could be also that in agricultural soils you have a supply of organic materials of non-agricultural origin. So it could be compost from other areas, so wood chips from forests, green cuttings from field or street margins, or, for example, wood-derived charcoal, etc. And of course, there's also a transport of soils by the wind or by water. So, for example, these loess soils are soils which are derived from blown in dust or sand particles over thousands of years. So next, please. And now to the biological part of soils. So who is incorporating really this, the organic matter, which is typically laying on the soil surface, into the soils? And here this bioturbation function of earthworms is very important, beside the root growth, which by itself brings carbon down into the soil. And here we can distinguish between two major groups of earthworms. So the endogeik earthworms, which burrow in the upper 30-40 centimeters of the soil, and which are mainly burrowing in horizontal way and consuming soil organic matter and transporting and mixing these soils or these upper soil layers. And then we have these uneasic earthworms, which burrow down to a depth of in some soils down to 3 meters, and they really incorporate the litter which is placed on the surface during autumn, so the leaf litter, and they grab this leaf litter and pull it down really to deep soil layers, and so bring really organic carbon down to the soil. These are the most important animals, I would say, in temperate regions. In other regions, we have also, formerly in, or mostly in dry regions, we have ants, termites, mice, hamsters, badgers, etc., which also perform this bioturbation and mixing of the organic rich topsoil with the non-organic enriched subs. Next, please. But in agricultural soils, the farmers will do this turbation not with the help, or not so much with the help of the animals, so they will do it with the machines. And we have this mechanical incorporation by digging, plowing, harrowing, etc. And we have also, in some cases, this deep plowing where really soils can be plowed down to the depth of 3 meters. You can see these pictures on the lower right, where you can really incorporate the organic rich topsoil into deeper soil layers. And this can be important for carbon storage in the future. Next, please. So this was the incorporation of carbon, but of course, we have also a loss of carbon. And this loss of carbon is mainly due to microbial respiration. So microbes use the organic part of the soil to feed on, to build up biomass, and to respire. And this respired CO2 gets into the atmosphere again, and so the carbon or the organic substance in soil is lost. So this is a main way, of course. Next, please. Also, we have erosion by wind and water, where we can lose soil into water bodies or into the ocean. Next. So we have a substantial loss of the soil organic carbon in agricultural soils since the beginning of the industrial agriculture. So this ongoing disturbances by plowing, maybe not the appropriate return of organic matter, is a reason why we have lost about 50% of the humus or the soil organic carbon in agricultural soils in our northern hemisphere, or not only in the northern, but mostly in the northern hemisphere. Next, please. Yeah, and then we have this storage of carbon in soil. It is true that only a very small part of the plant components which grew on the soil every year remains in the soil for long term. So after 2 years, approximately 25% of the carbon from the roots and 10% of the carbon from the above ground plant components is really stored. So it's only a minor part, and after a few years, only much lower amount or much lower percent is really stored in the soil. So most of it is respired by microorganisms back to the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide. Next, please. So there are different concepts of carbon storage in soils. So the original concept is that really large humus molecules that are poorly degradable by soil microorganisms are stored in soils because they are not, these microorganisms are not able to decompose them or to use this carbon. And this is long considered the main reason for this carbon stabilization in soil. Also, the entrapment of organic matter inside of aggregates is, especially the role of earthworms here to mention, is an important way how to stabilize soil organic matter in soils. And so these calculations how much soil organic carbon in soil is stored or can be stored is often made by these soil organic carbon models like Roth-C, Century, and Daisy. And they divide the soil organic carbon into a labile, stable, and inert carbon pool. And in this case, we have the particulate organic matter, which is plant-derived material, which sometimes has already has still the shape of these plant remainings. And then we have the mineral-associated organic matter, which is really only organic molecules which are bound to soil minerals. And this mineral-associated organic matter fraction is considered as one of the important parts of the soil which can store carbon. And so the idea behind is the more minerals or unloaded minerals you have in soil, the more carbon you can store. Next, please. And so nowadays, there's another hypothesis that this old soil organic carbon consists largely of microbial residues. So that the soil organic carbon needs to go again and again through the microbial biomass, and this by microbial necromass, or the remainings of microbes, are then stored in soil and not so much degraded further by other microorganisms. But there are also another hypothesis that the increase in soil organic carbon is possible by increasing the particulate organic matter pool, which is typically considered as a labile pool. And here you can really increase the soil organic carbon by increasing the amount of organic matter input. And this, of course, depends on the climatic condition at the site. So in some cases it works better and others not. And there are maybe in the future several other concepts of why carbon can be stored and how good carbon can be stored in soils. Next, please. So here is an example for this carbon storage in soils. On the left figure, we have a removal of the crop residues, and we see that the carbon storage goes down. So we have less carbon in the soil. And if we add crop residues on the right side, so we have an increase of the soil organic carbon stock in arable soils. So this demonstrated the truth, or the high possibility that it's that it's true that the amount of carbon which enters the soil really determines how much carbon is stored in the soil. Next, please. So here we can see that soils with a very low carbon content have a higher potential for carbon storage. And this is one aspect which is might be important also for urban or some really degraded soils, which are often in urban areas, that you here have really a high potential to store more carbon in the future. And on the right side, next please. This carbon storage rate decreases over time. So it's not a pool of carbon which can be increased forever. So at some case you have a limitation, you have a capacity is reached of the soil storage, and then in the future maybe the storage potential goes down. So next, please. We can skip this page or this slide. But of course we will have problems in the future. Here you have a map of Germany, and as I said before, all these carbon storage depends on the input. And if you have not enough water available for plant growth, so if you have really droughts or very water limited conditions, you will have a problem with the input of this organic matter. So the plant growth will be limited and there's not much input into the soil. So this really questions how this carbon storage potential of soil is really true in the future, or for what regions can be true or not. So next, please. Yeah, and then I will come to a short excursion to the potential of biochar. Maybe you all have heard of it. So biochar is a material which is made by pyrolysis or other ways of producing it, and it's a pyrogenic carbon, a stabilized carbon, and this biochar is very stable against mineralization if it's produced under a high temperature and a good feedstock. And this biochar can be added to the soil. So in many urban areas, if they want to grow plants or want to grow trees in the soil in the cities, they have added biochar to the soils to increase the water holding capacity of these mostly degraded soils in cities, to get a better start conditions for the growing trees. And also if you have very clayey soils, you can decrease this water logging in these soils by adding biochar. So these are maybe two advantages of adding biochar into the soil. Next, please. There are also other possible positive effects reported. So we have a decrease of nitrous oxide and methane emissions sometimes in soils. Then you have often reported yield increase in combination with fertilization, or you have used nutrient-loaded biochar. And we have made an experiment at the University of Hohenheim where we applied 30 tons of pyrolysis biochar per hectare. And we have seen that by this, we can really increase the soil organic carbon content by almost half, so by 45%. And this will be stable for many years. But of course, with all these additions to soil, like biochar, compost, etc., you have to really check the response of soil organisms and so the response of so-called soil health to these additions. And I would say it's not really clear for all these additions whether it's really good for soil health or not. So next, please. Then there are several publications about soil health and how to produce climate smart soils. So you have this tree which you can go down, and so what to do to get a better soil or to get a climate smart soil. And in this case, next please, you have to be aware that if you increase the soil humus in a soil, it's only temporarily an increase. So after a while, if you stop your management or your proper management, it can be also degraded very fast, and so the carbon can be lost again from the soil. So next, please. So in a summary, there are different measures to increase the soil organic carbon and the soil humus. So I would say as much plant biomass as possible remains in the soil. So return of harvest residues is very important. To avoid bare fallow, so to integrate catch crops in the crop rotation, or in urban areas, really to make sure that your soil is every time planted throughout the year. Then for agricultural soils, of course, conservation tillage is recommended. Organic fertilization is good to increase the soil organic carbon content, like manure, slurry, biogas slurry addition. Crop rotation and perennial grassland phases are important to increase soil organic carbon. And this is also true for urban areas. You should really plant deep rooting plants in the field or at urban areas to increase, on the one hand, soil organic carbon storage, and also to really get a green cover which is quite resistant against drought, so they can reach deeper layers where they can get water in the future. Next, please. Yeah, same cultivation of plants with high biomass is also recommended to have a better storage effect and a faster increase of soil organic carbon in deeper layers. Cultivation of perennial crops, which have typically a higher root biomass. Then plant field margins permanently. Install arable strips with agroforestry. So it's one big topic actually in Germany, maybe not only in Germany, really to increase the heterogeneity in agricultural soils, but also for other soils. It's recommended to, maybe grow trees on the sides. And then application of substances that are difficult to degrade, like I mentioned, compost, wood chips, or biochar. And with this, you can really increase the long-term carbon storage, or in this case, I would say the carbon sequestration of soils. And there's another attempt to do really direct CO2 binding in soils by addition of alkaline rock material, which is milled to a very fine powder, so to enhance the rock weathering of this material, which can then really trap CO2 and increase the pH of the soil, which is sometimes a quite good measure if you want to increase the pH in very acidic areas. So the next slide, please. And this is the last slide, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Sven. That was practically a lecture, and I really appreciated your effort in making it available for us during this webinar, for those who will be listening to the recording, and also I suppose the slides can be freely shared with a broader audience. So we will take care of that. There is no more time because the original idea was to finish by 11:30. So let me only take the floor for 30 seconds to thank all those who attended this webinar, the 51 who are still here with us now. There will be additional events like this organized by the HuMUS Project. Stay tuned, contact us on our website, which is humus-project.eu, and also stay tuned because of the upcoming call for pilot projects, which will be published in early November. Apologies for those who made a question but didn't get a direct answer. I see there is still some traffic on the chat box. I hope that most of you have been satisfied with our answers. In case not, please send us an email at info@humus-project.eu, which is our official email address. Thank you very much for attending this webinar, and stay tuned and see you soon on this screen. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.